everybody, it's Keri, one half of the Library Lunch Ladies, and today we're going to make homemade beef stew. And I have a different helper today. Since Miss Sarah's at her home and I'm at my home, my husband is going to be my other lunch lady. So cooking is something that my husband and I really enjoy doing together, and we don't get the chance to do very often because we both work. But now during the quarantine, I'm working at home from more, and he's home, so we get to do cooking together, and we enjoy it quite a bit. So if you're looking for something for you and your partner to do at home, cooking might be the next awesome thing you do together. So we look forward to bringing you our beef stew, and we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, so this is my husband, Matt.
Hi.
And this is his beef stew recipe. So he's going to actually be doing a lot of the talking because he's the one that makes it a lot in our house. And when I do make it, I have to have him like walk me through it or write it down. So the first thing we're going to do, Matt, right, is get our, we use a Dutch oven, but you could use...
You could just use any kind of stock pot that you have.
And you put some oil in it and...
Yep. Sometimes I use butter, sometimes I use oil. Kind of depends on my mood.
Okay.
So I've just got it's probably about a cup of flour here. Kind of depends on how much beef you're using.
I think we have a pound today, right?
We've got a pound of beef stew meat.
And you didn't always use stew meat. My mom made stew and she always used stew meat, but what did you guys use?
I grew up, usually we bought like a cheaper piece of beef, so like a round steak or sirloin or something like that. So I just added some salt and pepper just for a little flavor in the flour. And then you just take your stew meat chunks, and I usually do like half at a time or whatever size bowl you use, just so you can get everything evenly covered in flour.
You dredge it.
Dredge it. I also grew up with my parents. A lot of times would do this in a big gallon Ziploc bag and just toss everything in there and shake it. But you're wasting a bag then.
That's true. But that would work really well. If you're in a time crunch, maybe.
Yep. And then just, shake off as much as, just so that it's covered, but you don't have to shake a lot off, but you don't want to just put raw flour in there too.
That thickens up the sauce though a little bit.
Put it in, yeah. So in the long run, the flour that is on this will help thicken your stew. So you just keep doing batches, half at a time, third at a time, whatever size bowl you've got.
But you can put all the meat in at once.
Yeah, all your meat goes in your pot at once. Just how much room you have to dredge your flour. Dredge it in flour.
I was never a huge fan of beef stew in my life, and no offense to my mom, but I didn't really like it. But Matt convinced me to try it again, and he made it for me, and this is super easy, but also super delicious.
Yeah, I don't claim this as a family traditional recipe, but somewhere my parents started cooking it this way, and I just kind of cook it the way they cook it, but do my own things too.
Yeah, we're going to spice it up a little bit later. And not really spice it up, but
do it a little different.
More robust flavor.
So once you've got all your meat in, you're just going to, kind of stir it occasionally, and your whole goal here is to just brown the outside of this. It's kind of like searing it. Keep some of the moisture in your meat, and just basically get it brown on all the outsides.
So once it's brown, we'll come back and show you, and then move on to the next step. All right, so it's pretty ready to be taken back out of the pot. It's browned, and if you can see, there's all the flour in there, giving some good brown bits to our, I don't know, is it sauce? Is it broth? What is it called? I mean, the whole thing's called stew. All right, we're back. We took the meat out, and now Matt put in, I don't know, a couple tablespoons of butter. For the next step in the gravy. We decided on a gravy. Matt suggested
stew juice.
Gross. That just sounds disgusting. So it's probably called gravy. So how much butter do you think you put in there?
It was probably 2 tablespoons probably.
Yeah.
You can again use oil, olive oil or something. really you just need enough to saute the onions, and that's it. So my butter's kind of frothed up now, so I know it's ready and hot. And we'll put in, this is about
close to an onion.
About an onion, like a medium-sized onion. You can use less or more depending on how you like things.
And sometimes we use garlic.
Sometimes I put garlic in, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I put celery in.
If we have some laying
If
around,
we have some
that
laying
needs to
around.
go.
Yep, so I would usually do that now if I'm cutting it thin. Unless you like a stew that's got big chunks of celery in it, then you would put it in later.
I don't mind celery. This guy doesn't like
No,
celery.
It's a waste of a vegetable.
It's not. It's good for you.
But you'll just saute these like you normally saute onions till they're translucent. Kind of as they give off liquid, you can kind of scrape the bottom because you will find you have a very brown bottom of your pan from all the flour.
We can take a look at that. Very brown bottom. Okay, so you can see how brown the bottom of our pan is. And you can see that the onions are giving off some of their onion juices. What are they doing?
The onions are sweating.
They're
so once you
sweating?
sweat your onions and they turn translucent, which
You get that?
they're about there.
They're getting there. They're getting there. So then today, what are we adding, Matt?
Today, we're adding a coconut porter.
Local coconut.
Yes, from City Lights Brewing.
Yes.
When I grew up, we never did this step. We just sauteed some onions and then skipped to where we'll get. But I like to deglaze the pan, which is get all the brown bits up, with something. So I've done red wine a lot, but lots of times you hear about an Irish stew, which you would use Guinness for this. There weren't any good stouts that I liked at the liquor store, so I went with a porter.
And this coconut porter is fantabulous. City Lights is a great brewery here in Milwaukee, a local brewery. So we're not only going to have a great stew, but we're supporting local business. And it looks like too, Matt, you're trying to scrape those brown bits up from the bottom here.
As this kind of reduces and bubbles, kind of want to scrape the bottom of your pan and get all those brown bits up, because that's pretty much just flour, which will end up thickening your stew.
It's getting a little foamy. A little bit. Or is that the flour?
That's the beer.
That's the beer, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So lots of times I've done red wine with this too. You know, I used probably about half a can of beer. You know, so maybe half a cup to a cup of red wine. Basically enough to scrape the stuff up.
Yeah, and give it an extra kick of flavor, extra layer of flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're gonna let that simmer for just a smidge.
Yeah, you kind of want to. I usually hear people say it should reduce in half, but you know, let the alcohol cook off and try and get as much of the bits up as you can.
So you definitely want it to kind of boil and burn off that alcohol, right? Pick it up.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll be back with the next step. Okay, so here it is. As it thickened, we did add like
Another quarter of the beer.
another quarter of the beer, and stirred it pretty much constantly
Yeah, scraping the bottom real hard.
so that it got like this wonderfulness. So our next steps are to put in the vegetables and the stock. Matt's hiding behind me. You can't even see him. Anyways, we're back. This is why it's fun to cook together. You get to mess around with each other. So what have we got here? We're going to put the meat back in.
Yep, we'll put the meat and potatoes and carrots back in.
And so whenever Matt, I'm like, so how many potatoes and carrots should you have? It's just, there's no real answer.
You kind of make it how you want it. If you have a small piece of meat but you need to eat more, then you put more potatoes in.
And carrots in?
Yeah. I like lots of carrots. I know people that don't. So I tend to find that I've got half amount of carrots to the amount of potatoes, but really it's whatever you have or want. And remember, it's stew, so it's something that just cooks long and slow, so it can be what you want it to be.
Yeah, so we had carrots that needed using up, and just like 4 large russet tomatoes, not large, a medium to large, and that's what we used. That's what we've got in here.
And your meat, and then I'm just using beef stock.
Which you got all over me. My gosh, be careful.
Basically, you just want to just cover all your ingredients so that they can simmer in there for a while.
Okay, let me take a look at that. All right, so there we go. Matt was saying that you just want to cover your ingredients with stock.
Yep.
And you only use stock, correct, Matt? You never add water?
I've always used stock. You could probably do water and a lot of herbs, but I think it's easier to just use stock if you've got it.
Yeah.
Or bouillon or whatever you've got.
Yeah, you could do water and bouillon, right?
Yep.
We have put herbs in there before, especially if we make it like in the fall when our herb garden is still going.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've put in rosemary.
I've done rosemary, I've done
Lavender.
basil, lavender. Sometimes I stick some bay leaves in there, sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fun thing that you can play with. It's
Yeah.
cheap ingredients and you can play with flavors, and usually it's not horrible.
It's delicious. I don't know what you're talking about. So then, Matt, how long are we going to simmer? Do we bring it up to a simmer and then turn it down?
You kind of get it bubbling just ever so slightly, and then keep it on nice and low.
Okay.
And
Like on 1 or 2?
1 or 2, yeah, depending on your stove.
Okay.
And then it's kind of a question of how long you got. If you cook it if you let it simmer a little harder, really you just want your potatoes and carrots to be done. So once they're done, you can eat it. So I've seen recipes where it's an hour and you're done. But it's kind of a nice Sunday meal where you can just let it bubble for a long time and those flavors just kind of work in more. But keep an eye that your potatoes don't get super mushy.
Yeah.
So you want to keep it on low. There were times when I was a kid that our gas stove didn't get very low, and my dad actually stacked the burners so that it could be super low.
Wow.
And cook for hours. So it kind of depends on your stove, your mood, and your time.
Okay.
So
we'll
let it get to a simmer and cook for a while.
Okay. And what do you have it on right now to get it up to a simmer? What are you going to put it on?
I've got it on medium.
You're going to keep it on medium there? You're not going to turn it up at all?
Yeah, because with this Dutch oven, once it gets hot, it gets pretty hot. So it'll come up to a bubble pretty quick. If you're using like just a normal stock pot, I would still keep it medium-ish, because otherwise that stuff on the bottom is going to start burning again.
True.
So yeah, I wouldn't go much above medium.
Okay, cool. Okay, so it's been cooking for probably about an hour and a half, and it's thickened up, and it looks awesome, but we need a little more salt.
We need more salt.
And that's the thing, is you gotta kind of taste it every once in a while to make sure that your spices are right. If you decide to add herbs, salt and pepper. We are light salters here at the Whitmore household, so we generally need to add salt to almost everything.
Yeah, I have found through years, it kind of depends on what kind of stock you use and how salty it is.
Yeah, sure, because some are saltier than others. Or if you would use broth instead of stock, if you make your own beef stock, because you're that awesome,
it might
be salty, might not be,
yeah.
Depends. Or if you could use vegetable stock in here if you were in a pinch, right?
I've done a bit of beef stock and mostly chicken stock because that's what was in our fridge.
Yeah. Because, it's the quarantine. You got to work with what you got.
Work with what you got.
So, I think it's ready to eat, correct?
No, we're going to let it cook. We want to let it cook a little longer after you salt it so that it kind of soaks in the vegetables.
I was wrong, everybody.
So if you're doing it the quicker way and let it simmer a little harder, you can eat it once stuff's tender. You would check it a little earlier.
Okay, but we're letting it go slow.
Yep.
We're not in a time crunch because we got nowhere to go.
We're home.
We got nowhere to go. So so we'll let it cook a little while longer, and that salt will hopefully bring it up a little notch, and we'll be back with the final version. Okay, it's all finished. I'm very excited to try it. guys can see. It's a little, it's hard to show on the video, but some meat and some potato. Matt's off camera, but the salt level is good. It's delicious. It's really easy. You can do it as fast or as slow as you want, but the slower you do it, the more tender the meat will be, and the meat is really nice and tender right now. So I want to thank you guys for being with us in our couples cooking. And make sure you also watch the Quarantine Quick Meal for the really easy slow cooker rolls that you can make with this to dip them in. It'll be fantastic. So until next time, bye-bye. Stay safe and stay healthy.